I ran with the last of my strength down the school hall, my lungs burning, but I couldn't stop. I heard that Alfred and Loki were running after me. They were about to catch up with me, and then I didn't want to be dismembered. I needed to survive. Then the pool door caught my eye. There was no choice. I ran in there and tried to run to the window, but then the door slammed. Alfred and Loki found me. They were coming. This was the end. Alfred was my brother, and Loki was his best friend. I had been in love with him for as long as I could remember. Loki seemed perfect to me, tall, muscular, and smart. There was always something to talk about with him, but Loki never took me seriously. No matter how many times I tried to hint at my feelings, I sent anonymous valentines and flirted, but all in vain. I had to accept that we were friends, but secretly, I was hoping for more. Right now, me, Alfred, and Loki were just hanging out. We spent the weekend in clubs, and last week, we also had a lot of fun. But this time, Loki came up to me and asked me to dance. What? Seriously? I shyly agreed. As we danced, Loki approached me, and my skin crawled. He whispered that I was beautiful. He was flirting with me, but then Loki took my hand and gave it to a strange squeeze. Wait, was he taking my pulse? Apparently, Loki was just drunk, but the next day, he called me right in the morning. I was surprised. We usually communicated through my brother. Loki immediately suggested a walk. I started to call out to Alfred, but Loki interrupted me. Let's go for a walk together. What had gotten into him? Until this day, he didn't notice me and then suddenly he asked me out. I was in shock. Never mind, this was my dream. I immediately began to get ready. I put on my best dress and heels. Meeting at the house, we went for a walk around the city. Loki was so easy. We were chatting about everything from science to TikTok trends, and then Loki suddenly slowed down outside the museum. Look, there's the Gunther Hagens exhibition going on right now. Shall we go in? This was the crazy guy who made sculptures out of human bodies. I refused. I didn't want to see this abomination. Loki drooped. There was an awkward pause between us after that. I tried to fix the situation, but Loki said he was tired and took me home. As I said goodbye to him, I noticed my brother carrying a large crate. Hey, what's inside? But Alfred snapped back that it was none of my business. That was strange. He was never rude to me. What had gotten into him? My mood was ruined. The date didn't go well, and Alfred was so angry. I tried to push the bad thoughts away and went to bed. But in the morning, I was awakened by a strange rustling. As soon as I opened my eyes, I jumped back in horror. Alfred was sitting on my bed with a measuring tape. What's happening? But Alfred snapped. He wanted to buy me jeans, but he didn't know the size. Anger boiled up inside me. Did he expect me to believe that? I couldn't stand it and shouted at him to get out. Enough! And at that moment, my phone rang. Loki. I picked up the phone right away, and he asked if I'd like to go on a date. But yesterday, Loki wanted to finish it quickly, and now he was inviting me again. It seemed strange, but I couldn't hide my joy. This was my second chance. Meeting me, Loki apologized for yesterday's behavior. He just really wanted to get to that exhibition because he dreamt of becoming a pathologist, even though training was very expensive. My reaction upset him. I nodded understandingly. It was my fault. And then we went to the movies for a horror movie. At one point, I was so scared that I smuggled up to Loki. But he wasn't afraid at all. He didn't turn away from the horrific scenes of the mad scientist's operations, but rather looked at everything with interest. It scared me. Was this really interesting? Then we went to a bowling alley, but Loki was looking into his phone the whole game. He was constantly being sent messages. I waited until Loki was distracted, then looked at his phone, and I was terrified. My brother sent Loki a picture of a man in blood-stained clothes. What? Then Loki called out to me, asking what I was looking at. I shivered. It is the menu. The whole thing was creepy. I immediately went to Loki and said that I wanted to go home. I had a headache. He offered to walk me through, but as we approached the house, I noticed my brother at the garage. He looked around as if he was afraid, and he was carrying a long black bag. What was there? I pulled Loki by the tree. I needed to find out what my brother was up to, but Loki suddenly started pulling me in the other direction, saying it was none of our business. Wasn't he interested? And then I heard a noise. Alfred dropped a bag. It clattered to the floor. Some strange knives fell out of it. I looked back at Loki in shock and asked if he had seen it, but he shrugged. What are you talking about? What do you mean? I was about to point out the evidence to Loki when he grabbed me around my waist and pulled me to him. Before I knew it, Loki suddenly kissed me. My cheeks burned. Oh my god. When Loki pulled away, I looked away in embarrassment, waiting for a declaration of love. But instead, Loki said to me, "See you later," and ran away. I looked around, confused. I didn't understand. My brother was acting strange and so was Loki. Everything was gone crazy. I turned around, but my brother was gone. Damn. These boxes, the bag, and the photo, I was afraid. What had Alfred gotten himself into? I realized that I just couldn't sit still. I would sneak into his room and find out for myself. Making up my mind, I quickly made my way to my brother's room and carefully turned the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. Damn, he had locked up. He was definitely hiding something. I took the hairpin out of my hair and began to pick at the lock. Judging by the video from TikTok, if you raise the mechanisms at the same time, the door will open. But 5 minutes passed, and I was still fumbling. Heck. And then, just as I was about to give up, the lock clicked. Got it. I went inside. The boxes of bags were next to the bed. He wasn't even going to hide them. But as soon as I opened them, I froze. They were stuffed with surgical instruments. But why would Alfred want them? I was completely lost. And then I saw that my brother had left the laptop on. Damn, I had never taken his stuff before. But I needed to find out. Glancing back, I quietly walked over to his laptop. The conversation between him and Loki was opened. Just as I was about to read, I heard footsteps approaching. Oh no. Convulsively, I began to look through the conversation, and then I saw a strange phrase. Alfred wrote that he would like to sell her for organs. I immediately remembered how he measured my height while I slept, how he hid the surgical instruments, Loki's strange hobbies, and this black bag. Would they pack my organs in it? Oh my god, I felt a rush of heat. I wanted to run, but the footsteps were already very close. At the last second, I slipped under the bed, and Alfred and Loki came into the room. I was shaking with fear. What if they noticed me? Alfred and Loki began to discuss something, but all I could hear was my own heart pounding. Go away. But then Loki fell silent, and I listened. He asked if everything was ready for the operation. He just wanted to get this thing over with. Alfred replied, "My sister doesn't suspect anything." My heart sank. Was courtship, even kiss, a game to distract me? He found a way to make some money. Sell me for organs. Tears welled up my eyes. Scumbag. No, I needed to get out of here. But before I could think of anything else, Alfred dropped the phone right next to me. Oh my god. My mouth was dry with excitement. If only he didn't notice me. But then Alfred bent down and our eyes met. At the same time, he grabbed my arm and pulled me out from under the bed. Look who I found here. I was shaking with fear. I couldn't believe that my own brother and my beloved wanted to sell me for organs. I screamed that I wouldn't let them do it, and shoved Alfred hard and ran down. I had to run. I couldn't make out the road because of the tears, but I could hear that I was being chased. I wouldn't give up so easily. It was getting harder to run. I slowed down in front of the school, and without thinking, I dashed inside. So I was at the damn pool, and Alfred and Loki were slowly closing in on me. I started to carefully step back, and then it was too slippery. In an instant, I fell into the pool. Pain shot through the back of my head as I hit the side of the edge. My vision went dark. I tried to swim to the surface, but I just floundered and swallowed water. The panic was making it harder to hold on. No, I didn't want to end like this. Then Loki jumped into the pool. Did he want to drown me? I tried to fight him off, but I was already so weak that I was sinking under the water. This was the end. Loki wrapped his arms around me, but instead of drowning me, he dragged me to the surface. I didn't understand anything at all. Why did you want to sell me for my organs? They looked at each other in bewilderment and suddenly laughed. They weren't going to sell anyone. Surgical instruments were the props for my birthday party. They wanted to make it in the style of a zombie hospital. What? But what about the conversation? Alfred wrote that he wanted to sell her for organs, and he measured my height, but my brother just smiled. In that conversation, he joked about the dog with which he was tired of walking, and he measured my height to order a costume for the party. I didn't couldn't believe it. Loki was acting strange too. He measured my pulse, for example, but Loki interrupted me. He was just worried that I was feeling bad because of the heat. I was all red. I was so ashamed. How could I think that about my own brother and Loki? I apologized to them and then smiled shyly. A kiss was really an effective way to distract me. But Loki suddenly hesitantly hugged me and exhaled that at first. He was really distracting me. But after the time we spent together, he realized that he liked me too. At this point, my heart almost stopped. Loki looked me in the eye and asked me quietly if I would be his girlfriend. His words turned my stomach. Of course, yes. A couple of days later, it was my birthday, and of course, we had a party in zombie style. It was the best party I'd ever had. And after this story, I never jumped to conclusions again, and I don't advise you to. Did you like the videos? Subscribe and like it. Support the channel. Thank you! If you are reading this, then I am no longer alive. I was recently adopted by Bill and Irene Morris, but I know something. They want to sell me for organs. All the children disappear from their beds. Talk to Miss Larkin. On my first day at the foster home, I found this note under my bed's mattress. The kids who had been adopted with me were running around and I stood there, frozen. My new parents Bill and Irene seemed strange to me. When I first met them, they were silent and quiet, as if they were hiding something. The door creaked open and Irene poked her head in and called me for breakfast. I quickly shoved the note back under the mattress and hurried downstairs to find out what was going on. As I was going down the stairs, I noticed the closet door was ajar, so I decided to look inside. In the dim light, I could make out several cots, each with their names painted on it: Johnny, Liz, Annie. But there was no one with such names among the adopted children. Whose beds are these? I immediately remembered the text of the terrible note. Back in the orphanage, I was told about people who sell adopted children for organs. I have to call the police while we're still alive. I knew the phone was only in parents' room. I have to get there somehow. My parents strangely looked at me as we ate breakfast. It was as if they understood that I had discovered their secret. I got up from behind the table and told them I wasn't feeling well. But I actually went to their bedroom. Closing the door behind me, I immediately grabbed the phone and dialed the police number. Suddenly, something creaked behind me, as if there was someone else in the room. I fearfully turned around, but there was no one here. A voice said, "Hello, it's police station." I whispered all about the strange parents. The note and the cots. Do something. We'll soon be sold for organs. But the cop apparently thought it was a hoax and hung up. Then I got really scared. No one can help me. I decided to pull myself together. So if the police need proof, I'll find it. I'll start with a visit to Miss Larkin mentioned in the note. That same day, I decided to find her. There wasn't a soul in the area, but suddenly I noticed an old abandoned house. The door was open and a sign on it said, Miss Larkin. I cautiously stepped inside. The house was terribly dirty. I went to the back of the room and there, in a chair, in the middle of the cats, sat a terrible old woman with sparkling eyes. I said Bill and Irene were my parents, and the old woman grinned. It turns out that they already had a boy, Johnny, who also visited her sometimes. He said that his new parents praised his developed lungs. And then he disappeared. Seems like he was sent to a special school in Boston. Disappeared? So the note wasn't lying. I have to save all the children. When I got back, I noticed a guy my own age standing outside the house. His name was Rich, and he arrived this morning while I was away. He was adopted too. His parents died in a car accident, and he had long dreamed of finding a family again. I was ashamed to say that my real parents just left me and went somewhere in Vegas. But Rich seemed like a nice guy, so I told him. Then I realized I had to warn him. Terrible things are happening in this house, Richie. But he just laughed and thought I was joking. Then I called him into the room as I wanted to show him the note, but it had disappeared somewhere. I was desperate. But Rich said he believed me and was willing to help. But if we were in danger, he must make sure of it. First,
We found in the internet that special school where Johnny allegedly went to study, but there was no one named Morris. So I suggested we search the house and we snuck into Bill's office. There were a lot of surgical instruments, some receipts, and cash calculations. And on the table, there was a notebook with the children's weights and heights. Do you believe me now? But Rich said it still didn't mean anything. We started arguing when we heard someone coming up the stairs and ran into another room. Rich said he'd had enough, and he didn't like the idea right away. We'd better stop doing this. I knew Rich wouldn't help me, but all my fears were confirmed. I had to run away from here today. Before dinner, Irene sternly called me into the living room. I was sure they already know that Richie and I had been going through their office. I went down the stairs without feeling my legs and found Richie standing helplessly in the middle of the living room. A nasty old man was patting him on the cheek. My parents introduced me and said that an elderly couple had come to visit us. They are their old acquaintances, and I must make friends with them. All evening, they asked us about our hobbies, patted us on the head and admired us, saying look how healthy they are. I was very scared. Why are they so interested in our health? After dinner, I saw how the old people give to our foster parents a package. It was clearly money. They sold us for organs. I waited until everyone was asleep and went to Richie. We have to run right now without waiting for the night. I burst into his room, but he wasn't there. Suddenly, someone put a hand on my shoulder. My stomach went cold with horror. Oh no, it was Irene. I started yelling, asking where is Richie? But she calmly replied that he had a nightmare and asked to sleep in their bed. In horror, I remembered the note again. The children disappear from the parents' bed. Irene strangely smiled and added that I could see it myself. I didn't want to go into the bedroom, but I had to make sure Richie was okay. I cautiously went into their room. Rich was indeed in the bed, peacefully sleeping. Maybe I'm really getting myself in mood. I felt relieved, so I crawled under the covers to him and immediately fell asleep. When I woke up the next morning, Richie wasn't there. I looked around and realized it wasn't my parents' bedroom. Suddenly I heard footsteps, and a long shadow appeared in the doorway. I immediately pretended to be asleep. I felt someone bending over me and opened my eyes a little. It was the same old lady who visited us the day before. I screamed. What do you need and where is Richie? The old lady hesitantly said that Richie was gone. She wanted to reach out to me, but I immediately rushed out of the room. I ran into the kitchen and saw the old man there. He was holding a bloody knife, and something that looked like a human liver was lying on the table. I backed away and wanted to throw something at him, but something wet came under my hand. Oh no, it's Richie's t-shirt. It's covered in blood. I darted in the opposite direction and ran to the second floor. The old couple was coming up behind me. Judy, come to us. Don't be afraid. Then I rushed to the bathroom and climbed out through the window on the ledge down. I'm almost free, but it was too late, and a car with Irene and Bill came around the corner. I ran through the garden, but they grabbed me and dragged me into the house. No, you won't get my organs! I was screaming, trying to get away. Then I heard Richie's voice. He was standing in the middle of the living room, all safe and sound. Richie began to reassure me, saying that he was now the adopted son of my grandparents. Irene and Bill helped him find a family, but I still didn't believe it. What about the knife, the t-shirt, the bundle of money? The old couple smiled and said that Irene and Bill were helping those who were not officially allowed to adopt children. They take the children home and then transfer them to such families. The bundle was a thank you pie, and the knife was bloody because the old man was cutting up the steak for dinner. The t-shirt was stained by Richie himself in the morning when he opened the pomegranate syrup. At first, the old couple wanted to take only Richie, but seeing how we became friends, they decided to adopt me as well. But what about the missing Johnny? And all those surgical instruments? Bill good-naturedly laughed. It turned out that the boy wasn't lost. He now has a new family. They live nearby, and he was given to swimming. But their neighbor, Miss Larkins, has a very bad temper. That's why they didn't tell her anything. As for the instruments, Bill is a surgeon and all the instruments are from the hospital. Irene hugged me and apologized for sneaking us to the old couple's house last night. They just didn't want to wake us up. We slept so sweetly. I sipped my tea in silence for a while, trying to make sense of what happened, and then I burst into tears and asked everyone for forgiveness. Irene and Bill didn't look so bad now. They hugged me, and the old couple gave me a handkerchief. Apparently, I was so offended by my parents who abandoned me that I completely stopped believing that someone could take care of me. But now I understand there are still people who don't wish you harm. And you just have to learn to accept their help.